1.20.2 has now released, so let's cover everything that is new within this update. We will not be covering the features that are introduced into the experimental villagers toggle. This will only be features that are within the update. The first thing that has been changed in this update, diamonds that spawn within deep slate layers, so below 0 on the Y value, should be more common. And this is actually quite a good example. As you can see, there is one right there, there are another two right there, then there is also another one right there. And this is just to make diamonds a lot easier to find, where you don't have to strip mine for them as much. You should now be able to find a decent amount of them when you actually enter a cave. So inside of this update, diamonds should be a lot easier to find. They are still more common at the very bottoms of the world. So if you go very low, there are still more diamonds down here than there is up at the top of the deep slate layers or the middles of the deep slate layers. These diamonds will only generate more commonly in chunks that haven't been loaded. So if you have a world that you have loaded chunks, diamonds will not change within them chunks. The best way to get this feature is to either go to chunks that haven't been loaded before, reset chunks, or just make a brand new world. The next feature, which won't mean much for most players, but I'm going to mention it anyway, you can now waterlog barrier blocks. So barrier blocks, which is a creative item, can now be waterlogged. So if you want water that just sits there in a invisible block for maps or anything like that, you can now actually make that happen. Another change is when you're actually on a vehicle is basically anything that can be ridden, horses, boats, camels, anything like that. You can now no longer crouch on the actual vehicle. Chorus flowers can no longer support things on the side or bottom face. So if you try to place something on the sides, as you can see, it doesn't actually let you. And this is the same on the bottom. So if this chorus fruit was to grow up and over, and you try to place it on the bottom, it will no longer allow you. Sponges and wet sponges now have their own unique sounds, so when you place them and break them, they will now use a new sound rather than just using a already existing sound. The next change is some entities within minecarts have been adjusted so they fit in the minecart a lot better. I don't exactly know what mobs this is, because obviously a lot of mobs do go into minecarts. But the change here is it just says that some mobs have been adjusted. And just from looking at some of the mobs, I don't notice any difference. It seems like maybe they've been moved down a bit, so they actually are in the minecart a little bit more, as before they would be quite high. But I'm not actually too sure. The next thing we're going to showcase is a big thing within Minecraft now. The actual attack range of entities has been changed. This does not affect players though, it only affects entities attacking players. So let's quickly just show you what I mean. As you can see, this Enderman's hitbox is 1 by about 3. Before this update, you could build up 1.5 blocks to actually get away from the Endermans attacking you, and they wouldn't be able to do anything about it. Now, if I go in survival mode and look at this Enderman, as you can see, although I'm on these 2 blocks, it can still hit me. If I go up to a 3rd block, the Enderman will no longer be able to attack me because I'm outside of its hitbox range. So basically how mobs determined if they can reach the player is based on hitbox length. So if you are within its hitbox length, then it will be able to attack you. Also, if you are within its hitbox height, it will be able to attack you. So basically to get out of the mob's attack range, you have to now be above its hitbox or below its hitbox. Or you have to be a few blocks away from it, so it obviously can't reach you. So a few things to note about this change. That does now mean Ravengers will no longer be able to hit you through a few blocks. They will still be able to hit you through like 1 or 2 blocks, I think. But any more than that, and they shouldn't be able to anymore. This should also mean if you are literally 2.5 blocks above a Ravenger, they will no longer be able to hit you. As you can see, because I'm above its hitbox, it can't actually damage me. If I was to drop down just below that pixel right there, you can see, then I would be attacked. So let's actually quickly just showcase. If I broke this slab, as you can see, it will instantly actually attack me because I dropped within its hitbox range. Now, a few things to note about this actual change. If you have mob farms where mobs fall into a certain area, be wary when going near them, because this could break some farms. Mobs might be able to hit you where they wouldn't be able to before, so just be careful when going near mob farms until you are sure that it's safe. Also, alongside this, if you are riding a mob like a horse, baby mobs like baby zombies and baby zombified piglings, they will no longer be able to attack you while you're on a horse. just like zombies and 2 tall mobs can't attack you while you're on a camel. Though you are safe from baby mobs if you're on a horse, because technically they can't reach you, you're too high for them. The only actual villager change that is in 1.19.2 is if you actually have a villager that is cured with a zombie, you will only be able to get a discount from them the once. You will not be able to cure them multiple times to get more discounts. There is a new game rule within this update, and it is game rule ender pearls vanish on death. By default, this actual game rule is set to true, so when you actually die, any ender pearls that are yours will be removed from the world. But you can actually set this to false, so if I was to quickly just kill myself or die, as you can see, the ender pearl is still there. So this is good if you want a world where stasis chambers are nerfed, so if players die, they then have to go and set their ender pearl back. Or you can make it so the ender pearl will stay there no matter what. And then there is also a lot of technical changes. I'm not going to cover them all because a lot of them are just little minor tweaks. But I will quickly just mention data pack and resource packs have been updated to version 18. If you want to read all of the technical changes, they will be linked in the description in the patch notes when they are actually released, so you can check them all out there. The next thing we're going to cover is skin and name reporting. Now, I can't really showcase this because it's obviously something that you can do, but you can now actually report players for having inappropriate skins and also names. So if you're on a server with someone and you think their skin or their username violates Minecraft's terms and conditions, then you can actually report them. And if the actual name or skin turns out to actually violate when you make the report, that name and skin will be banned from being used by anyone. Also, if your name is banned, you will then have to change your name. You will be prompted when you first load up Minecraft that your name has been banned and you do need to change it. And it's the same with the actual skin. With the skin, you will still be able to play servers and stuff like that, but you will be a default skin, so Steve, Alex, or any of the others. And with your name, I think you can still play single player worlds, but you will actually have to change your name before you can play multiplayer. There has been some updates to vibrations, so Skulk sensor vibrations. If you actually have a vibration being sent and it is outside of the simulation distance, it should now still be sent to the Skulk sensor. Also, there are some new vibrations. When you unequipped a piece of armor, it will send a vibration frequency of 4. If you actually send books into a chiseled bookshelf using a hopper, that will now send a vibration frequency of 11. Turtle eggs that crack, so when they go up a hatch level, that will output a signal of 11. And when they actually hatch to give you the baby turtles, that will now output a signal of 12. Bone meal being used on things like grass will now output a signal of 3. Fire being put out by a water bottle will now output a signal of 12. Although you do have to be careful with this one because throwing the bottle will also send a signal. Sweet berry bushes being eaten by a fox will now output a signal of 11. And carrots being eaten by rabbits will now output a signal of 11 as well. Camels being fed cactus will now output a signal of 8. And then finally, evokers spawning vexes or evocavangs will now output a signal of 14. They both have the same signal, so you can't use it as a way to determine what the actual evoker spawns. One of my favorite features within this update is command history. And basically what this means, if you do a command, so let's say you always want to be in creative mode when you join a world, and you do, let's say that. If I was to leave this world, in prior updates, there would be no way to get that command back. But if I quickly just leave and then rejoin, the command should now still be within chat. If I do the command and I click the up arrow, as you can see, they are still there. Now, one thing to note about this though, it's not different per world. So if I was to load up another creative world and I was to do the same thing where I click the up arrow, it will still load me all of these commands. Another minor tweak, pink petals will now have a different hitbox depending on how many actual pink petals are within the block. As you can see, 1 now has 1/4 of a block, 2 now has half of the block, 3 and 4 now have a full block. Nippers, frogs, goats and camels would actually not panic if they were on a lead, But now, as you can see, if I punch any one of these, they will now panic and try to run away, although they can't. If you actually have a pregnant turtle, and that pregnant turtle is doing that sand diggy thing, that will now actually activate Skulk sensors. 2 bugs that have been fixed related to camels. Camels that spawned within desert villages could sometimes spawn within blocks and suffocate and die. That has now been fixed, so they should no longer spawn within solid blocks. And also there was a bug where you could actually place blocks above their head like this, and when they would actually stand up, they would instantly suffocate. It now says they shouldn't stand up if their head is obstructed. So I guess this is a way you can basically make camels always sit, although it doesn't look the best. I guess this could be useful to make it so if you are out exploring and you don't have a lead or anything, you could just make it sit down and then put some blocks above it, and it should always stay there now. Skulk sensors will now actually be activated if you dash with a camel. Magmas and slimes will now actually be affected by the hostile creature's sound toggle. So if you want to turn down slimes and magmas, then this is a toggle you now have to use. And also, eating chorus fruit while falling will now reset your fall damage. So as you can see, if I was to do something like that in survival mode, I wouldn't take full damage upon landing on the ground beforehand. Anyway, if you enjoyed, do leave a like and subscribe, and I guess I'll see you guys in another one very soon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye. 100. I ate the chorus fruit and landed at Y level 60. I would take 40 blocks worth of fall damage. Well, that has now been fixed, and you'll now take 0. Repeaters and comparators will now use stone sounds when placing and breaking them. Levers now use stone sounds as well, and tripwire hooks now use wooden sounds. Jukeboxes will now also use wooden sounds. Another change with jukeboxes, if you actually have a jukebox that is playing a music disc, it actually outputs a redstone signal. Or if you have a dragon head on top of it, it will now flap its mouth. And if you have a pigling head, it will now flap its ears. Bees will now be able to pollinate themselves on to chorus flowers and also spore blossoms. It seems like you can now also use these to breed them and tempt them as well. Pandas, hoglings and zoglings, they will no longer be able to attack you if you are riding on top of a camel due to you being outside of their hit range. Another change with sniffers, goats, frogs and camels, if you was to feed these and make them breed, they would prioritize breeding over panicking. So now if you actually was to hit them while they are trying to find their lover or breeding, they will now stop that and panic instead. And this camel is actually still sitting here. It hasn't actually got up. I think we're just going to leave him right there. But anyway, that is where I'm going to end this video. That is everything within 1.20.2. It is a very small update, like it should be, because it's a point update. But some of the features it's introduced are really good for the future of Minecraft, especially diamonds being more common and also the changes to mob attacks.